Hi there, this is Daniel with In Time Country Living, and in this video I have a bag here full of corn that I grew last year. But the trouble is, how do you get all these kernels off the cobs so that you can make use of them and grind them into corn flour? Well, that's coming up. So after you grow corn, there's a process of harvesting it and getting it dried out. So that requires leaving it on the corn stalks for as long as you can before wet weather and rain comes so it doesn't mold. And then bringing it into the house here and stacking it up to get good airflow and to let it dry. But once that happens and it gets very dry, you need to get it shelled off. And so that's one of the things that I've done in the past, is to do it by hand, and that is doable. Just basically taking your thumbs and popping off the kernels one at a time or a couple at a time. You can also use cloth gloves that have the rubber coating on them so that you have a good, and you kind of wring them out, and that's one way of getting them off. But when you have quite a bit, that's quite time consuming, and the gloves definitely help on the soreness of the hands, but it still can be a lot of work and time consuming to do that. So one of the things looking forward to growing more corn, this is Painted Mountain, and it's very pretty corn. It's a flint type corn, and I really enjoy it. You can get a little bit of color in the cob itself, little flecks of color in there. It's very pretty. So this is kind of what the kernels of corn look like. They're not the dent type. Dent type is the normal yellow and white corn that you see as a field corn. This is very rounded on the top, and so it's very nice, fairly nice flavor. Makes nice cornbread. I like to make cornbread and grind it up into corn flour and put it into like a casserole dish, make a batter out of it and bake it. And so that makes a nice cornbread that I can use for eating for breakfast and with oats or fruit and things like that. So one of the things I've been wanting to do is to get a sheller, something that I could use to get these off without having to do it all by hand. And so wanted to share with you a little bit about what I found and what seems to work really well. So this here is what I was able to get from a lady back east. They don't have too many of these out west here. I looked in the thrift stores for months and months looking to find out who might have one available in my area, but they don't seem to be available here in Oregon. So I ended up having to get this off of, I think, Facebook Marketplace. And so this is what you'd call a corn sheller, something where it's a mechanical hand crank device. So as you can see on the back side here, there is a hand crank. Allows you to rotate this by hand. And this one was actually in fairly good condition. It still has the original paint on there. It's got a little bit of rust, but not terribly. I cleaned it up, the main parts of it here, the inside where it's gets knocked off here. Okay, so this is just a screw that goes through to hold this on, and then there's a little square nut on the back here holding these two parts. This is all cast iron. So I'm going to take this bolt out there, and then there's actually another bolt down at the bottom that's holding the corn sheller onto this box here. So these corn shellers are mounted on generally a box that will collect the corn kernels and also give a good stable surface. This creates a good, keeps it from moving around. So you need a fairly tall box. This one is about 12, 13 inches tall. This box has a lot of history. It was when I first moved out from my parents' place and had my own place up in Portland. I went to one of the thrift stores, I think, is where I got it from, or an estate sale. I can't remember where I actually picked this up, but it's something I had, probably 15 years ago. And so it's been in my life for a long time, and I used it for putting vegetables in and different stuff when I first got it. Okay, so this bolt comes out here, and then this piece comes off. This is kind of what it looks like. A little bit of a curve in it. Here's the hole down at the bottom. Each one of these is stamped with a part number. So if something breaks, you could reorder it from the company. I'm not sure who makes this one. This is not labeled or any kind of markings to identify the original manufacturer, but it's probably at least 50 years old or so. So now you can kind of see the inside here. So I want to show you. So all these little teeth in here is what is going to rub up against the kernels as it goes through, and these will be knocking the kernels of corn off the cobs in there as this is rotated around. And so it's going to come down near the bottom, and then it's going to be working its way up because of the rotation, the counterclockwise rotation like this. Or let's see, is that right? Let's see here, what we're doing. Yeah, so it's a counterclockwise rotation, and this will kick it up through here, and then this piece here will come up through here, the cob, and eject it out the side here into a bin of corn cobs. And so that's kind of the process there. And this little piece here, a lot of them won't have this. As far as I understand, it's for knocking off the ends here. So you can put this into here, and you can knock off some of the ends if they don't get, especially small like this. A lot of times they'll leave the kernels on there, so you could bump it up against there and crank it and knock some of the kernels off the tip like that. So a little bit, sometimes you have to touch it up a little bit. Clean. These are fairly small compared to some other field corn, and so it just doesn't always do a terrific job on getting some of the smaller ones. So this is the other side of it here. This one actually does come off without undoing the main screw, a bolt that attaches it to the box. So this is a tensioner. It's got a spring on here, and what that allows is this to move 1/2 of the column here to move in and out as the cob goes through. And so you can, depends on how much pressure you need, the spring allows you to adjust, put some more tension on the spring, and that will make it a little more stiff if you need to, for smaller cobs. And if you have bigger cobs, you can undo the spring a little bit. This is a bolt that goes through. One of the beauty of these older ones is just these wing nuts. They're really neat looking. They just kind of have this little curved architecture and kind of coming up underneath. I've seen this on this style on a cedar that I got from the kind of this same era. And so somewhere in the 1950s or so. It's not a perfect, I think this is cast, and then they thread it inside, but it's just such a, you just don't see the quality anymore. This is solid, solid metal all the way through, and just the beauty of it's really neat. So really happy to be able to get an antique one. So there's the spring, and then the bolt it's like a carriage bolt, the square piece right on near the top there. And then this comes out a little bit. Takes a little bit of work to get it past here. But this comes out, comes off, I should say. Let's see. Well, you know, maybe I thought I had it off, maybe not. I think it does if you do it just right. Anyway, you get the idea. Just wanted to show you kind of how it works. So there's just pivot points right here on either side. So put that back together. The bolt through, the spring on. Put this little kind of a washer on top of there, and then the wing nut. Give a little tension there. And I'll go ahead and put this other piece back on. Not with that bolt, but this bolt over here. Whoops, that's going the wrong way here. Let's put it around the other way. This bolt goes through two of them here. A little bit of a challenge to get it all put back together. I'll put the washer on here. Nut. Just tighten it up here. Okay. So this is the handle that gets attached here. It's all nicely made out of cast iron. And this has a little kind of little wing nut, all very nicely made to indent here for your fingers to grab a hold of it nicely. So this comes off. This has a little washer on there as well. And then this comes off the shaft. So this is all highly greased. So this is fairly floppy in here. This mechanism in here, you can see it has a lot of wiggle in there. It doesn't seem to be worn, but so I think it's just supposed to be packed full of grease, and so I packed that all full of grease. And it seems to operate nice and smooth, and that grease kind of fills up the gap. So there's little notches in here, and I'm not quite sure what these little holes are in here. These are tabs. They're meant for sitting on the top of a box, and then it's to be bolted on here. But there's some other mechanism here that this could be maybe bolted onto or something. I'm not quite sure. If anyone knows, it'd be neat. So this is HS1, so this is the main part, and I think this is HS2, so the front part's HS2. HS8 it says on here. So they just kind of did them in order, I think. Different pieces there. So you can see the handle to it. This one, a lot of them had really messed up handles. The wood was all worn out or really floppy. This one is actually in pretty good condition. Could use a little oil in there and grease there to smooth it out, but it's very happy to find one in very good condition. So just basically a rotation here. All right, so we got it all put back together here. This is a nice flex to it. So let's show you how this thing works and see if it's something that you might want to look into getting for your place. So here's some of the different corn cobs. So it's basically just inserting them in the top here. It's fairly simple. Let's see how this thing works here. Okay, so didn't do too well on this one. There's still quite a bit left on there, so we'll run it through the other direction a little bit. So it's still leaving some, so let's tighten it up a little bit here. A couple rounds. in, so we got a few left on here, so we can just pop those off by hand. So there's going to be a few left on there. So I'll tighten it up just a little bit more. So you can see it kicks it out the other end here. So that did much better, tightening it up. So it's just a matter of getting a little bit adjusted. And just knocking a few of those off. So we need to have some kind of bin right here to accept the cobs here. So I'll put a little basket here down there. So that'll do that. So this one's a little bit fatter. Sometimes it kicks it. That's actually a fairly small cob comparison to all the kernels on it. So that got all but one. So that's pretty good. Okay, it's another one here. Just can't quite grab it to kick it out of there. A few more to pop off here. Up top, but definitely a time saver. So yeah, all but just one or two. This is my bag of corn here. This is kind of just the remainder of what I haven't shelled yet. Did all the rest many months ago, but just wanted to save this for the video. So, quite a variety of colors that are in here. It's very nice corn. I like it. It grows. It's early maturing, so that's why I chose it mainly. And so I got about 5 gallons or so worth of kernel corn in a bucket that I've already shelled with this. And my wife was able to do it, so it's fairly easy to turn and crank. It's not hard at all, so even children can do that. So anyway, we have some nice kernel corn here we can use for grinding, and so this very nice food source that's easy to grow and produces a lot of calories, and so that's one of the things I'm looking for right now on my homestead. I've gotten a lot of other good plants that are good for preservation, like onions and garlic, and what else here? We've let's see, lower calorie things like carrots, a lot of greens, so gotten a lot of that produced. Beets, kohlrabi, so the beets are a fairly medium source of calories. They got quite a bit of starch and sugar in them, so that's a good calorie source. But you know, a grain is nice to have to be able to make a bread, pancakes, things like that. And this is something that's very doable as far as processing it, where wheat and barley and oats, things like that, are very labor intensive and require a lot of winnowing and things like that, where this is pretty much comes out clean and you can just grind it the way it is. A little bit of winnowing will get off some of the little bit of the silk, but most of the stuff is just grindable and turns into a nice flour. And so anyway, just wanted to show you what this machine can do. These you can find for about $70, $75, $85, somewhere in that range on eBay, Craigslist, Marketplace. So anyway, look around and see what you can find. I think Marketplace seems to be the best as far as having several choices available, and where people are putting stuff on there. It's easy to communicate with the people. back and forth, kind of a messaging system on Facebook, so that's a real benefit that they have. And look around. Some of these are going to be, broken. Some of them aren't going to be very good shape. So don't be too eager to get the first one that you find. Keep looking around and look for better ones. And ask for more pictures of different parts to make sure all the pieces are there. Now that you've seen this one, you can get an idea of what you should be looking for. And so that's one of the reasons I want to make this video, so that you can get a real up-close look at some of these, because to get a hold of these in person is very difficult to find them in person. So a lot of this is going to be online and asking for pictures and looking at, analyzing it, see how much rust is on there, is it all pitted, or, there are parts that are missing or broken. And so, like I said, you'll see a lot of them that don't have this little piece, and I don't really use it that much, so I wouldn't say if that's missing, just throw it out. Don't buy it, but something to think about. Might be handy, and it just shows that it's a complete unit. And then the handle quality, the wooden handle on these tends to go bad on a lot of them, or crack, and that's not an easy thing to replace. And to make a new handle or put one on there, it's all just kind of pressed in there and bolted. So you really would have to split the handle down the middle and put it on there and re-glue it in order to really get it on there, because the shaft isn't removable. So anyway, those are just some things to think about. I think it is a worthy investment, especially if you plan to do this for many years, and this is a good food source that you can sustain your family when you can't buy things. And also it's just corn kernels are not easy to, whole ones are not easy to find. I have a lot of trouble. You can get popcorn, and that's about as close as you can get, which tends to be a little bit more expensive, but that's about as close as you can get to whole kernel corn. And cornmeal in the store is not going to have the nutritional quality because the germ has been removed. A lot of times the outer hull has been removed, so you're missing the fiber and you're missing a lot of the nutrition. And so, and this will store for a very long time without going rancid. And so you can keep this pretty much indefinitely. And then this can be seed that you can grow coming years. When I grow this, first, like a seed crop, I only do it just by itself, so it doesn't cross with any other corn. This year I'm going to not save seed. I got plenty of seed, so I'm going to go ahead and plant a bunch of different varieties and have a little fun and see what else other varieties that might be interesting to grow. But I think this is probably going to be my go-to crop, just because it's about about 65 days to maturity, as opposed to 110, 105, somewhere in that range, which a lot of the other corns are. So this is a very unique variety. Seems to do very well here in Western Oregon. So anyway, that's all I have for you. God bless. I will see you on the next video.